For the first time in their history, Cape Verde will be at a World Cup. It's an extraordinary achievement, not only considering the low level of football professionalism in the country, but also because we're talking about the second smallest nation, population-wise, ever to reach this stage. But the truth is, none of this happened overnight. Today, we're not just celebrating this historic moment, we're understanding how it was actually made possible. We'll look back at the story of the Blue Sharks, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how such a small nation managed to pull off something so monumental. So first, and as usual, let me give you some context. Cape Verde gained independence in 1975. 3 years later, they played their first ever match, a defeat against Guinea. The federation was only formed in 1982, and due to structural limitations, consistent participation in African Cup of Nations and World Cup qualifiers didn't really begin until the early 2000s. Cape Verde has more people living abroad than in the country itself, and that diaspora reality limited the local football scene at first. But one thing should be clear. Cape Verdean talent has never been in short supply. Looking at recent decades, Cape Verde could have had players like Nani, Eliseu, Rolando, Jorge Andrade, Miguel, Manuel Fernandes, Silvestre Varela, and even more surprising names like Patrick Vieira or Henrik Larsson. The potential was always there. The prestige and structure, not really. But everything changed in 2012. That year, Cape Verde achieved the unthinkable. They eliminated Cameroon, one of Africa's powerhouses, and qualified for their first ever Africa Cup of Nations in 2013. Nobody gave them a chance. They were drawn from the lowest seeding pot, but when the tournament began, they looked like a well-oiled machine, sharper than many historically stronger sides. It was a humble squad, but one with chemistry. Many of the players already knew each other from the Portuguese league. Nivaldo, Marcos Soares, Babanco, Giannini, Fernando Varela, all regulars in Portugal at the time. And Cape Verde began to expand its scouting network beyond its Portuguese diaspora, attracting players like Tony Varela from Sparta Rotterdam and Ryan Mendes from Lille, who would go on to become the country's most successful international. With that core, Cape Verde exceeded all expectations. They drew against South Africa and Morocco, and then beat Angola to secure a place in the quarterfinals. There, they faced Ghana, one of the continent's giants, but despite the brave showing built on fast counterattacks and set pieces, it wasn't enough. But the message was clear. Cape Verde had arrived as the best of the Lusophone African nations. During qualification for the next AFCON, Cape Verde finished ahead of Zambia, Mozambique, and Niger. In the finals, they didn't lose a single group stage game, showing incredible defensive organization. But the problem was that they only scored once and failed to win a match. More and more players were joining, like Gary Rodrigues, but progress began to stall. Cape Verde missed the next two AFCONs and of course the 2018 World Cup. Behind the scenes though, serious work was happening, including cold calling and even scouting through LinkedIn for players who barely spoke Portuguese. That's how they found Roberto Lopes, better known now as Pico, son of a Cape Verdean cruise ship cook and an Irish mother. He received an email from Rui Águas inviting him to join the national team, but since he didn't understand Portuguese well, he thought it was spam, and ignored it. After a few follow-ups, this time in English, he finally accepted. He made his debut in 2019, and 6 years later, he's earned over 40 caps and is now the leader of Cape Verde's backline. By the start of this decade, the improvement was evident. In 2021, Cape Verde qualified again for the AFCON, made it through the group stage, and only fell to Senegal in the round of 16. That same year, they went toe-to-toe with Nigeria in the World Cup qualifiers, but a costly draw in Lagos ended their dream. They were close, so close to a breakthrough, and in 2023, they took another massive step. In their fourth AFCON appearance, Cape Verde topped a historically tough group with Egypt, Ghana and Mozambique. They beat Mauritania in the round of 16 and only went out to South Africa on penalties. Quarterfinals in the biggest AFCON ever. Their best performance to date, and now they've reached the peak of their history. They had a strong qualification campaign for the 2026 World Cup, but how many times had they come this far only to fall short when it mattered most? In 2021, it was Nigeria. In 2023, South Africa. And now, in 2025, they faced one of Africa's true giants, Cameroon. From Roger Milla to Samuel Eto'o to the fighting spirit of Abubakar, the man who once beat Brazil, Cameroon have always been a tough opponent. Fate can be cruel, but that September afternoon, Cape Verde lived their footballing moment of truth. Dylan Livramento led a perfect counter-attack, ran 50 meters, held off the defender, reached the box and slotted it home to make it 1-0. From then on, the Blue Sharks held firm. 40 minutes of relentless pressure, attack after attack, but in the end, they stood tall. One small step away from the ultimate dream. Yes, they wobbled against Libya, but showed heart, fight and courage. They nearly turned it around, if not for a, let's say, questionable refereeing display. But destiny had something else in mind. The celebration was meant to happen at home, among a people who, despite poverty and struggle, found hope, a reason to believe that no matter how small you are, a warrior spirit can never be silenced. And so, in a packed national stadium, Cape Verde sealed their triumph, beating Eswatini to finish their story. Now, that's the beautiful part. But on paper, what are Cape Verde's chances at the World Cup? Historically, small debutant nations rarely do well. I'm thinking of Trinidad and Tobago in 2006, Panama and Iceland in 2018, who couldn't replicate their Euro 2016 fairy tale, even Angola, not a small country by size, but in a similar development situation 20 years ago. Plus, Cape Verde barely have experience outside Africa. Their international friendlies have mostly been against sides like Andorra, Bahrain, San Marino and Liechtenstein, with their toughest non-African opponents being Ecuador and Portugal. On the bright side, this will be the first 48-team World Cup, 16 more than the last, and that expansion opens the door to surprises. And make no mistake, Cape Verde will not be the weakest team there. For starters, they have a capable coach, Bubista, who's been a part of the project since 2007. He served in multiple roles before taking charge in 2020, and since then has become the most successful manager in the country's history, qualifying Cape Verde for almost every major tournament and now for the World Cup itself without even needing a playoff. And that, my friends, is not luck, that's work, adaptation, identity. The Blue Sharks know how to suffer, wait for their moment and strike with precision. It's brought them wins against supposedly stronger nations, and it's exactly what makes them dangerous. And make no mistake about it, there's talent there. Roberto Lopes is the defensive general, Lopes Cabral, one of Estrela Amadora's brightest players ready for a bigger move. Kevin Lenini, Gary Rodrigues, Ryan Mendes and Wagner Pina all shining in Russia, Cyprus and Turkey. Jovan Cabral, Bruno Varela, Bebe and Logan Costa might not be featured recently, but they remain valuable, experienced options. And finally, the symbols. Vozinha and Stopira. Two veterans, both now playing in Portugal's second division, who've carried this dream for over a decade and passed it on to a new generation. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter what happens next. Just being at the World Cup is the victory. It's Cape Verde's statement to the world. Now the real challenge begins. To keep building, to keep scouting globally, and to wisely invest the money this qualification will bring. Angola couldn't do it 20 years ago. Now it's up to Cape Verde not to repeat that story and to make proud not only those who stayed, but also the 1.5 million Cape Verdeans scattered across the globe in search of a better life. And that is it for the video. Subscribe if you want to watch content like this, and if you don't want to watch content like this, then don't subscribe. Either way, thanks for watching the video, I'll see you on the next one.